Like I've stated before, sometimes the inspiration to do a video comes from getting ready to do something on the old Casper. So as you can see, I'm covered up with fittings and fuel lines and a fuel cell and all kinds of stuff. So we're going to dive into the power level that you're making versus the fuel line size that you actually need. Stay tuned. A lot of people debate fuel line size, but the most important question there is how much fuel does your engine need to supply to make the power that it makes, right? So you actually have to start with the engine in a realistic number. For Casper here with Project Mixed Up Boss, I was on the dyno, so I know how much power it makes, but more importantly, the data that I got from the dyno was even more important. You see, it all starts with brake specific fuel consumption. You'll see in this little picture that I'm getting ready to put in, and notice that tells you how much fuel is used to make a given amount of power. The lower that number, the better off it is. Typically, you will see the lowest numbers around peak torque because that's when the engine is most efficient. So, and if you're using any kind of power adders, whether it be nitro, supercharged, or turbo, the brake specifics are going to be a lot higher due to the fact you're going to have more friction and more efficiency loss in making that power. So something to keep in mind. With Mixed Up Boss here, we were in the low to mid 0.4 range, which is pretty typical. Anywhere from 0.45 to 0.50 is typical for an NA engine. So then we can take that number and figure out just how much fuel is required to make 708 horsepower. It's pretty simple math, really. I'll put the formula down below so that you can see how and what goes into it. Once you have that number, you have something to work off of, and you got a really good guideline. Now, you will look all across the internet and you will find guidelines such as this one up here from Summit that you're getting ready to see. And those are just general out. Yeah, that word. So anyways, let's dive into it a little bit deeper. I know there will be someone out there who says they've went 8 1/4 mile with a 5/16 fuel line. Well, more power to you, buddy. Let me just tell you. Because I'm going to tell you from my own personal experience of what's worked and what hasn't. I got my first introduction to this fuel line thing with my 1970 Plymouth Duster. 5/16 fuel line from Mopar, right? Yeah, I know. Mopar guys have it rough. I think only the big block cars came with 3/8. But anyways, so built a hot 340 in it, take it to the track, and man, this thing's running good, but on top, it just starts to be flat. Man, I chase my tail. Now, you have to remember, I'm a teenager at this point, and I don't really know any better. So I went through all of the usual culprits, you know, plugs, wires, whatever. Come to find out, it was a fuel pressure issue because of the 5/16 line. Like I said, this was a pretty hot 340. I was using a Carter mechanical fuel pump, which suctions on the line instead of pushes, it pulls. So what I did at that time, once I figured it out and talked to a guy by the name of Floyd Sanders at Shady Side Dragway and a guy by the name of Johnny Whitaker, I put a Holly Blue fuel pump pushing into the Carter, and that solved the issue. That's one example. So you can see with the Duster, and I would imagine the Duster was making somewhere around 425 to 450, which was pretty hot for a teenager, to be honest with you. But nothing earth-shattering anyways. But irregardless, example 2. I know you've seen my short of the Mustang that went 1040s at Z-Max, right?
reckon going to be there first, though. 16-15 to Dana 7 Cobalt Racing. From Lowell, North Carolina, the Mustang. He's getting himself set up in the Wicks lane. While over on the jet side, it's Steve Schroeder in his 99 version of the Blue Oval Mustang. Miles an hour, 11:19 at 1:30.
Well, I was using the stock EFI tank with a 255 liter per hour fuel pump. Okay, using the stock factory line coming up to a Mallory 4309 fuel pressure regulator. This is a bypass regulator that is used typically to run high pressure and reduce it down to low pressure so that you can run a carburetor. Well, needless to say, I found the limits of that, okay? In that video, I'm running the factory 5/16 line with a coupling where it comes into the fitting, and I'll put a picture of that in there. My buddy Josh Haynes took this picture and sent it to me, and we were just reminiscing about how crazy we were. Because not only were we running this, you know, through the quarter mile, we were running it on E85, which taxes the fuel system even more. And then on top of that, a ton of nitrous. When I say a ton, at that particular time, it was about a 150 shot. We made this thing go from mid-10s to like a 990. And then guess what happened? We started nipping spark plugs. Just melt the ground strap completely off of it. So at that time, when we started to do that, we realized we needed a real fuel system in the car to carry the fuel needs of that engine nitrous combination, because we really seen the limitations of using the stock fuel line. But when you think about it, that's pretty impressive, because it takes nearly 600 horsepower to run those kind of times at the weight that we were running, which through a 5/16 line, you know, that is crazy. Don't be this guy. So my recommendations when it comes to fuel line sizes might be a little bit different than what you see, and this is just for me, but I'm telling you because it's worked for me in the past. The stock 5/16 fuel line seems to be good up to around 450 horsepower. Right, and it just depends on the fuel pump that you're using, so on and so forth. 3/8, I found a wall with this truck here, right around 600 horsepower. You know, it did fine, but like I said, I noticed that it was starving at the top end of the quarter mile, not the 1/8. And then finally, if you go above that, you need -8, -10, so on and so forth to support big power. But this video is really meant to be a guideline for someone just getting started with a carbureted setup. Maybe we'll go into EFI stuff later on, because I've done a lot of stuff with EFI back when I had my shop, but you know, it is what it is. So part of the allure of Casper has to be kind of looking period correct. I'm not a fan of stainless braided hoses on this truck for that reason, because in 1971 that was not a real common thing except on fuel cars. So I looked long and hard, and I found some NHRA accepted braided push lock hose. I've got enough fittings in there to plumb a house, literally. I had these regulators, but I'm gonna run 2 regulators, one for each carb. That's a -8, by the way, which is 1/2 inch. Now, if you look at the recommendations online, this engine already exceeds that. But like I said earlier in the video, when you have enough fuel pump to push that fuel, such as this, that's when you can get away with it. Now, you may say, why are you putting such big pump on there? Well, like I said, down the road, the plan is to have nitrous on Casper in some form or fashion. But you'll never know when I have it on there. Just saying. Got me a good fuel cell, and it come with a stupid GM sender. I mean, why do they put every fuel cell with a GM sender? I don't know. I don't get it. But dash 8 fittings here. That's dash 8 hose. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be getting into with Casper, hopefully tonight. Well, as you can see, this is the inside of Casper. Nothing really special. I mean, it's just plain Jane. Even got my little hula girl there on the dash. And my all-important Sun Super Tac 882. But the thing that has made me cringe the most about this truck since I've had it is, in fact, this. So ever since I've had Casper, this has made me cringe, especially when I'm taking it to the track. It still has the stock gas tank in it, and with that, it has a 3/8 line that you can see right there. Now the difference is, this line starts right here and goes up to the engine. So did I find the limitations with the 600 horsepower 393? Yes, I did. In fact, it wasn't in the 8th mile that I found this issue. It was in the 1/4 mile down at South Georgia Motorsports Park, down at the Mod Motor Nationals. We were running Casper, and on top end it just kind of laid over, and it's because of the fuel restriction. Now, I was running it through just one Holley regulator, feeding 2 carburetors. Not an ideal setup, but it did have a really good fuel pump. In fact, this truck has the first fuel pump that we put on Old Blue, which is an Edelbrock ProFlow 160 gallon per hour deal. I think that's what it is. Anyways, it's up underneath the truck, and that's what I used, and there's no way it's going to stand up to mixed up boss. And so that's why I decided it's time to get that napalm bomb out from behind the driver's seat, put a proper cell in the truck so that it can feed mixed up boss the right way. I'm going to give you a quick peek underneath the tarp. You can see that throttle linkage is on there. Still have to do some adjusting on it to get where it's not binding up. Oil pressure line's on. I got the motor mount situation taken care of. Now it's just more small things before I take this thing this weekend and have headers built. Now, one of the things that's going to happen, I told you I like doing things the hard way. The whole front clip of the truck is going to be coming off in the next day or two, and that's so that it'll be easier for Tyler to build the headers. Makes sense, right? You may be saying, well, why didn't you do that to start with when you put the motor and transmission in it? Well, it's pretty obvious. Since I'm working on this thing out here in the driveway, I wanted to be able to cover it up and have it protected as much as I possibly could until the last minute. I know that's just part of being outside in the driveway working. So sometimes you have to do things a little bit backwards, but you know, case in point, going back to the fuel line deal, just make sure that you have enough pump to go with the line for the power that you're actually making. And if you're in doubt, you need to go to the next size up. I know that's not much of a tip. Sometimes bigger is better. Till next time, this is Andy from Unity Motorsports Garage. I'll catch you later. Oh yeah, just so you know, Casper has been called out by John Cope of John Cope's Racing Transmissions. He has a Ford F100 with a Hemi in it, and I'm talking Mopar 3rd gen Hemi. This thing is awesome. So John, I accept the call out, We're going to do it on a 400 Pro tree. You were sneaky in how you did that, because he knows that I'm going to be foot braking old Casper here, and that's hard to cut a light on a 400 Pro tree, but I'm going to give it its best effort. So, John, I'll see you in Sykeston, Missouri at the No Name Nationals. If you want to be a part of it, check it out.